Alright everybody, reeling it in here. So it's now time to introduce our speaker, Victoria Colangelo. Victoria has over 15 years of sales and marketing experience serving Florida's mitigation, banking, credit industry. Victoria's vast background in the wetland mitigation and habitat conservation banks industry has designated her as one of Florida's most sought-after mitigation bank sales brokers. Victoria is passionate about partnering with mitigation bankers, environmental consultants, and developers to aid in the mitigation process. I've been chatting with her for the last 15 minutes. Really interesting stuff. Hope you guys will pay attention and learn something after this and get with Victoria afterwards. I think she can really help your business. So please help me welcome Victoria.
Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you, Linda, for inviting me to come and speak with you today. I'm so honored. Again, Victoria Colangelo with the Mitigation Banking Group. I've been doing mitigation wetland credit sales since 2004 when I was a senior at UCF and kind of fell into this industry. Didn't know what a wetland was, but I was an intern and kind of learned and taught myself every way up from A to Z. And so now, after 3 years, I own my own company, representing 15 mitigation banks and conservation banks, representing over 50,000 acres of land throughout Florida. And I'm excited to be able to be here today to speak with you about the opportunity that I could possibly be to you to provide to your clients so that you have more information during the due diligence process when you have land that might have potential wetland impacts or land that might have endangered species on it. And so I'm going to kind of just go through the process. If you have any questions, please ask them as we go. This is very informal. If you've ever purchased mitigation credits before, please raise your hand. If you know what a mitigation bank is, please raise your hand. If you know what a conservation bank is, please raise your hand. Wonderful, good. All right, so we're going to go through the 101s of mitigation and conservation banking. And like I said, if you have any questions, stop me and we'll answer them as we go. I want to make sure we get as much out of this as needed. Okay, so I told you about me already. I've been doing this since 2004, 15 years. I started the Mitigation Banking Group in 2017 and represent 50,000 acres of land over 15 mitigation and conservation banks. So we're going to go over the Mitigation Banking 101. What is a mitigation and conservation bank? Impacts. If I have a potential impact, what do I do? And suitable land. So there's two components. Not only are we going to be talking about if I have an impact of a wetland, but what if I have a large tract of land that might be suitable for a mitigation or conservation bank? So I'm going to talk to you about that as well. Okay, so a mitigation bank, it is a large tract of land. It can be anywhere from small end 200 acres to large end 25,000 acres. So if you had a suitable piece of property of a mitigation bank, maybe 300, maybe even 800 acres, there is an opportunity to possibly make that into a mitigation bank so that we could sell mitigation credits to a developer who are impacting wetlands within that same drainage basin. And so a mitigation bank, it takes about 2 to 7 years to get permitted. It will be permitted by the state agencies, probably the water management district that you're located in. So if this was a mitigation bank, we would be in the St. John's Water Management District in the Wekiva River Nested Basin. And so any impacts that are in that drainage basin, we can take care of because of those impacts. So mitigation banks are preserved in perpetuity. They have a conservation easement, so they will never be developed. And they have long-term and short-term financial assurances to make sure that that land is managed in perpetuity and never developed. So that's a wetland mitigation. Now we have a habitat conservation bank, which is if you have species. So in Florida, they have the sand skink, which is a cross between a snake and a lizard. And if you have sand skink on your land over in the Lake Wales Ridge, it's about $50,000 an acre for that impact. So it's good to know if you have that sandy soil, the white sandy soil, you might have sand skinks on your property. And so you'd hire an environmental consultant, and they do cover boards in the season of March to May. And every day, consecutively, they need to check those cover boards, kind of like large plywood from Home Depot. And they see if those squiggly lines are there. And if they are, you have presence of sand skink. And then you've got to go with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And you have to get permitted by them to make sure that you can build on this land. And you'd have to purchase mitigation or conservation credits for those impacts. Again, if you had any land on Lake Wales Ridge, 300 plus acres, that might be a suitable conservation bank, we should talk. Oops, I pressed the wrong button. Hold on. Okay, so impact. The most important information, if you have a land that you've listed or you have a potential buyer for, and there's land that might have, 20%, 30% of it might have wetlands on it, what do? Do you just tell the potential buyer, you cannot build on this land? No, they can. They can go through the water management district where they're located, and if it's a federally jurisdictional wetland, you have to also go through the Army Corps of Engineers, which is a lengthy process, but they can. They can provide plans to show that these are adverse wetland impacts. We are unable to avoid this to be able to have the best and highest use of this land, and therefore in our permit application, we're going to suggest I'm going to impact 1 acre of wetland, and I'm going to purchase 0.7 credits from Lake X Mitigation Bank, or whatever it might be. And that will offset those impacts. And so you can tell your potential buyer, it's going to cost you $70,000 to impact this wetland. Is it worth it to you or not? It is? Great. Let's move forward. Let's get this deal done. If not, sorry, but I'm glad you figured out this before you bought it. So to have that information at your fingertips to know how much mitigation is, and it's different in every different location, we can figure out the anticipated costs to find out if it's feasible for someone to purchase the land or not. So if you guys get out your phone and you go to my website, mitigationbankinginc.com, and you scroll all the way down to a map. It's the map of all 15 of the mitigation banks that I represent throughout the state. And you click on that map, and there's going to be a little place to put an address. And type in the address of your home. mitigationbankinginc.com. So if you type in the address of your house, you will find out which drainage basin your home is located in. And based off of which drainage basin your property or your impact location's in, determines which mitigation bank you can purchase credits from. And the reason that's so important is you might be able to purchase mitigation credits in one area for $50,000 and $350,000 for another. So it's very important for us to know where we are. Even, the other side of the city might be different. So we need to know exactly the location of impact to understand how much the mitigation will occur. So has anybody been able to find their drainage basin yet? Great. Which basin are you in? St. John's River Water Management District. Okay. So if your house, let's just say they had a wetland and you wanted to build a driveway and you were impacting, a quarter acre, I would tell you that there are 3 mitigation options, okay? And I would say you have culvert camera mitigation. They're $40,000 for a ratio credit for state mitigation, or $50,000 for a state and federal. You also have Lake X Mitigation Bank, that's $100,000 at a UMAM credit, so the different assessments, we gotta do both and figure out how many credits you need and multiply that to find the best option. And then there's also Farm to Mitigation Bank at $120,000 for state or $130,000 if you need state and federal. So now we have all these options. So we know now, okay, there's 3 mitigation banks that can service my project. Yes?
So you're talking about a driveway, 40,000 or an acre. What are you talking, what's the number you're using?
So I'm talking about credits,
Now, I get the credit.
okay?
How much can you build on it? An acre, a driveway? When you pay 40 grand, what can you build on? All of it?
So basically, let's just say we have an acre of impact, okay? And depending on the quality of the wetland, depends on how much you need to purchase, okay? So let's just pretend that it's an average quality wetland. 0 is degraded, 1 is pristine. They say 0.6, 0.7 is average. So let's just say we get a UMAM score, a Uniform Mitigation Assessment Method is what that stands for. And it all depends on the quality of the wetland. So the soil, the hydrology, the community structure, all these different things that an environmental consultant will help you obtain. And you'll take that UMAM score, you'll multiply it by the acreage, and that's how many mitigation credits you need to purchase.
And you can fill that in and do whatever you want with the land after that?
Yes. Now, of course, has to be approved with your application. You'll get a permit that will state, I have 1 acre of impact and I'm purchasing 0.7 mitigation credits from XYZ Mitigation Bank. And it will state that.
And who approves it? In this case, you said St. John's.
Yes.
Who approves it?
Yes, so you would apply for a permit with the St. John's River Water Management District. And if your wetland is jurisdictional to a navigable body water, you would have to also apply with the Army Corps of Engineers, because it's a federal jurisdiction.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Could that body of water be a lake?
Yes, the body of water could be a lake, yes. And, you know, a wetland to you and I, a layman person, doesn't always look like a wetland. These environmental consultants will go out and look at the soil. They have to be, it's a hydric soil. And if it's darker or they have these different elements, they'll say, this is a wetland. And you and I will say, that's not a wetland, but it is. So you have to be very careful and make sure that you have an environmental consultant come out and say, this is a wetland or not. Because you might think it's not, and it is. Okay, UMAM score. So this is what we were just talking about, the Uniform Mitigation Assessment Methodology. It ranges from a 0 to a 1. Average quality is about a 0.6, 0.7. So let's just say that your UMAM score is a 0.4 and credits are $100,000, they're $40,000. If it's a 0.7, it's $70,000 at $100,000. So the quality of the wetland really determines how much you're going to have to pay in mitigation. So it's not just about location, it's also about the quality of the wetland. If you have a high quality wetland, you're going to have to purchase more mitigation. And I'm sure you're all aware of this National Wetlands Inventory link. If you're not, please save this on your desktop. It's Fish and Wildlife Service. It will tell you if they believe that it's a hydric soil, if it is a wetland. Like I said, it's not 100% foolproof, but it will give you an idea. And it will have like a green layer, and you click on it, and it will say 24 acres of freshwater forested wetland. It will tell you. So it's pretty interesting. Okay, so permanent mitigation banks. As I said, I represent 15 of them. There are 80 federally approved mitigation banks in the state of Florida, and approximately 122 state mitigation banks approved. And what I mean by that is a mitigation bank has to also, not just like your impacts, they also have to get permitted. So the state agencies take anywhere from 2 to 3 years. You have to go through the Water Management District or the Department of Environmental Protection, and you get permitted. And so basically you're going to say, I have 1,000 acres of land. I'm going to put a conservation easement on it so it will never be developed. And I'm going to bring it from a 4 to an 8. I'm going to restore the hydrology. I'm going to plant native species. I'm going to remove the invasive species. I'm going to do prescribed burns. I'm going to do all these different environmental restoration activities, restore the hydrology, you name it. And based off those restoration activities, the state will give me credits. I also now have to get permitted for federal, the Army Corps of Engineers. They take 6 to 7 years. So you've got to be mindful of that, which is why there's so few. It's good because there's barriers to entry, but at the same time, it's frustrating for a mitigation banker. And so after you get permitted by both state and federal agencies, now I can sell credits to developers within that same drainage basin as my mitigation bank is located. And there's 86 different drainage basins within Florida. So that means there's 86 different market opportunities for someone like me to be able to tap into to be able to provide mitigation. So here's a map of all the mitigation banks that are permitted by the state agencies. And there's about 123 actually. And then here's a map of all the federal mitigation banks that are permitted throughout the state of Florida. So as I discussed, each mitigation bank gets a service area, and that's written in their permit. And so it will show you what's your service area to be able to sell credits. So basically, here's an example. This is the St. Johns River Water Management District map, and we are located today in Basin 15, the Wekiva River Nested Basin. And so you were only able to service mitigation within that drainage basin. This right here, 23, is Lake Jessup. This is where I live in Winter Springs. And it is a very expensive mitigation because it's in Lake Jessup. And there are no mitigation banks, so you have to do off-site mitigation, and credits are upwards of $350,000 a credit. So very high demand, very low supply. The credits of mitigation are completely market-driven. They are not governed by the government. Mitigation banks are owned by private landowners, and they set the price. Here's another map of the Southwest Florida Water Management District, also known as SwiftMud. There's 5 water management districts in the state of Florida. This is the second, SwiftMud. This is the Tampa area, the West Coast. You can see the different drainage basins. And then this is South Florida Water Management District. You can see there's 32 different drainage basins. Swanee River Water Management District, and the Northwest Florida Water Management District basin map. So, not only are we talking about impacts, but we're also talking about the potential mitigation banks. And do you have a project that might be suitable for a mitigation bank? Maybe you have a large tract of land that might be surrounded by other conservation easements, that might have some opportunity to restore it back to its natural state, the way that God intended it to be. And that's how mitigation banks get their credits, by restoring the hydrology, by restoring the land back to its natural state. So deserted orange groves, old sod farms, degraded land that used to be ditched and drained for, agriculture or railroads or whatever it might have been. Bringing it back to its natural state provides credits for mitigation banks. So if we did find land, we would have to find out if it would be a potential mitigation bank. We would do the due diligence. We'd find out what other players in the marketplace, what's the supply, what's the demand, what are the prices. And we would go through the permitting process, which I explained is a lengthy process, and the development of the mitigation bank, doing the restoration activities, and then selling the credits. Build it and they will come. So it all depends on if your mitigation bank is located in a basin where there's development to know if it's going to have any success. Yes?
Is there a minimum acreage?
I'm sorry?
Is there a minimum size
For the banks?
So the smallest mitigation bank in the state of Florida is 151 acres. And I'm not sure if that would be feasible in the future. You know, the bigger the better, but I would propose anywhere between 300 north. But you could go as low as 151 acres if you want. The problem with doing it so small is a lot of the costs are fixed. So you get more bang for your buck if you have a larger parcel. But you can do it. Okay, so like I said, restoration activities for a mitigation bank. You can, some activities for a mitigation bank to get credits are restore the hydrology with low water crossing, remove the invasive species, prescribe fire burning, and plant native species. Mitigation credit. So when I was speaking with Ben, and I love, and there's some common misconceptions that I'd like to address, is we're not trading acres, we're trading credits. And so a lot of people think, okay, I have 10 acres of impact, I'm purchasing 10 acres. You know, it doesn't work that way. So if I have a 1,000-acre mitigation bank and I'm awarded 200 credits and you need 1 credit, now I deduct it and I have 199 credits to sell. It's kind of like Bitcoin. It's a ledger that's regulated by the agencies, but it's deducted on a ledger electronically. And you don't get all your credits all at once. You get them as you go for the activities. You, ma'am. Yes?
Is there a max of how many credits can be established for a bank?
No. Depending on how many acres and depending on how many credits they generate, that's how it works. So let's just say we have 20,000 acres and you were bringing it from a 0.4 UMAM to a 0.8. You have that lift of 4 points. And what did I say, 1,000 acres, I think? So 4 times 1,000, that's how many credits you receive. And yes, and that's how it goes. So UMAM, we talked about this. It goes from a 0 to a 1 depending on the quality of the wetland. This is a big component of how much mitigation developer is going to have to purchase depending on the soils and the quality of the wetland. Location, landscape, quality. Yes?
So the credits somebody gets, it's for the improvements on the land, or so if the land already was pretty much a natural environment, they didn't have to do much to it, they wouldn't get the credits as a land that they have to do more to, is that correct?
Yes. So a mitigation bank is only gets credits based off the restoration value that they do. Now, a conservation bank, we were talking about species, they're different. They get it more based off the conservation. You don't have to do much restoration. You can, you'll get more credits, but it's more about conserving that natural habitat, you know, for the sand skink or the scrub jay or the Florida panther. But with wetlands, it's all about the restoration value. If you have land that's already pristine, there's no mitigation banking in your future. Another quick thing I wanted to say as far as misconceptions is some people feel that you can deposit land into a mitigation bank. You can't do that. If you were to do that, it should be adjacent, and you would have to modify your entire permit, which could open up a lot of worms, you know, and it could be a big process. So if you were to modify your permit to add more acreage, it wouldn't be for 5 or 10 or 20 acres. It might be 200 acres to add it as a modification. But you can't deposit new land into a mitigation bank. And I get that a lot, so I'm not sure if you had thought that or not, but that's not true. Yes?
Okay, please excuse me, I'm trying to understand this. This is a little above my pay grade. What I want to know is if a current owner sells a certain part of the land, what does the new owner have to do or does the new owner have to, does everything transfer over to the new owner as far as the credits and whatnot?
Yes. So if mitigation credits have been purchased, the mitigation credits go along with the permit. So the permit number is associated with it. So on my ledger, it will say 1 credit associated with such permit number. And that permit number is subject to that project. So if ownership were to be transferred, yes, it goes, the mitigation bank credits go with the land and the permit.
And also, is it possible to have, both, conservation and wetland on one, person?
That's a great question. If you were to ask me that, 5 or 10 years ago, I'd say no, but yes, there are wetland mitigation and conservation banks components. They're both. Yes, there are some. Yes.
This is a comprehension question for me. So the credits actually have no value until you're selling, like dollar value. I mean, it does have like a value of any land, but it's like equity in a home type of thing.
Yes, I could have $20 million for the mitigation credits in inventory, but you're right, they're worth nothing unless I sell them.
Gotcha. Just want to make sure. Thank you.
Yes.
And I'm assuming someone monitors these, so like if you were someone who bought the credits and let's say they didn't hold up their end and now they're not in compliance, is that a problem for the owner or what happens?
Absolutely, great question. So mitigation banking, if you were to purchase credits, you are completely transferring the liability and the risk to the mitigation banker. So for some reason the land is not kept in compliance, the mitigation banker is on the hook. Not all the developers who purchased all the mitigation credits the past 20 years. And that's the great thing about mitigation banking. The alternative form is to do on-site or off-site mitigation. And the on-site means that they would do mitigation on their own land. So if they had a large piece of land and they said, okay, I got 20 acres of wetlands over there, I don't need. It's not, the highest best use is for me to just use on-site mitigation. So I will apply for a permit and I'm going to say, I'm going to impact 1 acre of wetland and I'm going to preserve 20 acres on-site. If that mitigation fails and they monitor it over the next 5 years, yes, the developer is on the hook. There's also off-site mitigation. A developer doesn't have enough suitable land. Highest and best use is to use it for development. He doesn't want to use his wetlands as on-site mitigation. So he goes off-site. He stays within the same drainage basin, but he buys 20 acres from his friend Bob Schmo, and he uses that 20 acres for his 1 acre of wetland within the same drainage basin. If that 20 acres is not managed correctly, yes, the developer is on the hook, and sometimes they make them purchase double mitigation credits. I hate when they call me to do that. So purchasing mitigation credits transfers the liability and the risk from the developer of doing something that's really not their expertise to be able to manage. So it's great to just purchase mitigation credits, have somebody handle it that knows what they're doing as far as the environment is concerned. Yes?
Is this something that, well, give you an example. I got a 5-acre property out in Polk City. And
Where?
Polk City.
Palm City.
At Polk.
Polk.
Polk City.
Polk City, thank you.
Found out recently it's in the Green Swamp.
Okay.
My question to you is this something, when you're dealing with buyers or sellers, is this something we need to be concerned about if we're buying land or, property in a wetland? And is this something we should have on our radar?
Absolutely. So if there's wetlands on a parcel of land that a interested person is interested in purchasing, and they want to develop on those wetlands, there is potential for them to do so. They have to get it approved, but if they do get it approved, they can purchase mitigation to impact those wetlands, to develop on them. So it's a lot of people have the misconception that there's wetlands, you can't develop on them. You can. It's going to cost you. And you're going to have to go through a permitting process, but there is an option.
But that's something as a realtor I should let a potential buyer know.
I would think so, absolutely. Because, wetland mitigation is kind of like a big secret until you got to know about it, and then you got to become an expert because I got wetlands on my property. What is this?
Yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to talk more about the endangered species
Yes.
part. Okay. Is there a way to tell how long, let's say, a particular species has been on a particular parcel whether the development came first or maybe the species might have.
That's a great question. That would be an environmental consultant that could answer that, but I'm not sure if there is or not. That's a good question, and I mean, with developmental pressures, you know, you're seeing a lot of the wildlife moved out, which is sad, but yeah, I'm not sure if you can find out, you know, if things like the eagle's nest, that's all regulated. That all can be, you know, shown, and they regulate that heavy. It just depends on the species.
So I guess I'm curious in terms of the responsibility of, let's say, a buyer that comes along and finds out and maybe not notified that there are endangered species that are using that particular parcel. Who's liable?
So if they're developing on the land,
Or if the land has been developed by the time that the buyer comes along.
so maybe some compliance, you're saying. So their previous owner has impacted, they weren't aware, and now the agencies are finding out that you're out of compliance. That's a great question. You're on the hook. Yeah. Yes.
Very interesting. I've been doing this for 30 years, and you taught me more than I have ever known. It's really opened my mind. But the question is, so is there land out there that's identified right now, maybe on your map or other people's map, that said this would be an excellent bank?
If it was, it'd be purchased. And if you can find land, I will find you a buyer.
Okay.
I recently, not only just mitigation credits, but I recently sold in 2019 2 mitigation banks. So not only did I sell the land, one was 300 acres, the other one was I think 1,400 acres, but also came with all the assets of the mitigation credits because they were permitted. So huge component. So yes, absolutely.
And another thing I didn't realize before is the land has to have been beaten up and damaged in order for it to qualify.
Yes.
Okay.
We fix broken
it's
swamps.
already sailed. Those opportunities are gone now.
Yes, it's very high in demand. And if you look at 100 sites, you may find one suitable mitigation bank.
I got you.
You know, because it is, you know, you got to find that diamond in the rough. It is, you know, the agencies will have very high scrutiny and they have high standards on what they feel is acceptable. It's got to be regionally significant to the environment. You know, Florida Forever, the government, you know, they buy land to just put it under conservation, which is great. But what about the land that they can't afford? So these are private landowners who say, I'm going to put it under conservation easement and have some kind of, you know, passive income coming through with these credit sales, and I can still recreate the land, still have hunting rights, even, you know, hunting leases possibly, depending on if the permit allows it, and they can recreate in the land, horseback riding or, you know, canoeing, and still enjoy the land and be able to have these, you know, wonderful opportunity of having mitigation credit sales when they come in. The other thing is, if, you know, mitigation credits, it's very, you know, rapid. Sometimes, you know, we'll sell 8 credits a year, sometimes we'll sell 1 credit a year, and the next year we'll sell 50. So it just really depends. I-4 needed a lot of credits. The airport needed a lot of credits a couple years back. You know, you just got to kind of watch the market. And even in downtimes, the government spending will keep mitigation banking in flux because of the amount of money they put into the infrastructure. So it's a very interesting industry. If you have any additional questions, please let me know. Okay. Yeah.
So if a property has a PD already on it and it has a designated amount of the wetlands that are on there, and you're working with somebody to acquire that land, the PD doesn't necessarily deem that all that land is the wetlands. It has to be reevaluated to make sure that it's still all wetlands. Can some of the wetlands that are presently on the PD change into usable land?
You would have an environmental consultant out, yes. It's case by case basis, but absolutely, it could happen. Yeah, you would definitely want to have someone delineate the wetlands and have a second eye on the land and not rely on the websites.
Sure, no, I'm just curious if there could be a gain in land, basically, based off of like a PD that may be 15 years old. Obviously, it's going to be something that's going to be different. but I was just curious if maybe there'd be a,
Possibly.
yeah.
Possibly. I think more times than not, a wetland will be there that you didn't think was versus the
The other way
opposite.
around, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They'll look at aerial maps from the 50s and 60s to really show if it had a wetland function, and if it did, then, you know, it's a wetland. Yes?
Was all this in place when Disney came and can you talk about any impacts that they have to take care of?
That's a great question. So, mitigation banking started in the 90s, and we definitely mitigation credits have been purchased for Disney projects, but they do purchase a lot of their own land. They purchased a property called Mira-Largo. They purchased BK Ranch. They just did another parcel of land from that they just did for their own projects. So yes, they do a little bit of both, but majority of the time, Disney will do their own mitigation. And mitigation banks formed around, you know, after Disney was formed. So
when they purchase these lands that you just mentioned, nothing can be done with those lands now. They can't build on them or develop them or anything.
to be seen. You know, we'll see. It all depends case by case basis. I mean, if there's a road that's the right alignment, it might go through. You know, it all depends. But
But like Disney couldn't come in, like they purchased these places, and so they shouldn't be able to come in and build a big hotel there.
right. In the event that a developer or Disney has mitigation and they've already put a conservation easement on it, and now they think, ooh, we probably should have done that. They can lift that conservation and do double mitigation somewhere else. So that is an option. But it's not going to just go away. They will have to compensate for that. Yes?
Say you have like a 5-acre parcel, and in the back you've got like maybe an acre of uplands. Up in the front is all your wetlands. To get a permit just to build a road through there, you're not gonna, construct the building or anything on there. Is that easier and cheaper, or do you still have to purchase the credits just to build the driveway to get to your upland?
Same process. You have to go through a permitting process. Yes, it may be less expensive because you'll have less impacts.
But you still have to do the
Absolutely.
to get the driveway.
Yes. Now, if you have less than a half of an acre, you could be exempt from mitigation.
So the whole quarter acre, you got a lot that meets your zoning setbacks and requirements, and it's a quarter of an acre, and the whole thing's swamp.
If the wetland is over,
Under.
if it's over 0.5 acres, you have to provide mitigation. If it's under, you may be exempt.
You mean impacting half an acre? Or the whole thing has to be half an acre?
If you're impacting 0.2 of a 0.6 a wetland, you have to mitigate.
Well, I think we can say that this has been a very successful presentation, and we want to thank you very much. And your presence here today is exactly the power of networking. Because last month,